And if you are watching for the last minute and a half, I do apologize. I had not realized that I had the microphone on mute. So, oops. Sorry about that. Where was I? Fairy tales. Today's fairy tale, or the first one at the very least, is normally known as Little Red Riding Hood. However, in Grimm's fairy tales, it was entitled Little Red Cap. So to quote a radio show from my youth, "Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Once upon a time there was a dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, but most of all by her grandmother, and there was nothing that she would not have given to the child. Once she gave her a little cap of red velvet, which suited her so well that she would never wear anything else, so she was always called Little Red Cap. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Cap, here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is ill and weak, and they will do her good. Set out before it gets hot, and when you are going, walk nicely and quietly, and do not run off the path, or you may fall and break the bottle, and then your grandmother will get nothing. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say good morning, and don't peep into every corner before you do it." "I will take great care," said Little Red Cap to her mother, and gave her hand on it. The grandmother lived out in the wood, half a league from the village, and just as Little Red Cap entered the wood, a wolf met her. Red Cap did not know what a wicked creature he was, and was not at all afraid of him. "Good day, Little Red Cap," said he. "Thank you, kindly wolf." "Whither away so early, Little Red Cap?" "To my grandmother's." "What have you got in your apron?" "Cake and wine. Yesterday was baking day, so poor sick grandmother is to have something good to make her stronger." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Cap?" "A good quarter of a league further on in the wood. Her house stands under the 3 large oak trees. The nut trees are just below, so surely you must know it," replied Little Red Cap. The wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature! What a nice plump mouthful! She will be better to eat than the old woman. I must act craftily, so as to catch both." So he walked for a short time by the side of Little Red Cap, and then he said, "See, Little Red Cap, how pretty the flowers are about here. Why do you not look round? I believe, too, that you do not hear how sweetly the little birds are singing. You walk gravely along as if you were going to school, while everything else out here in the wood is merry." Little Red Cap raised her eyes, and when she saw the sunbeams dancing here and there through the trees, and pretty flowers growing everywhere, she thought, "Suppose I take grandmother a fresh nosegay. That would please her too. It is so early in the day that I shall still get there in good time." And so she ran from the path into the wood to look for flowers. And whenever she had picked one, she fancied that she saw still a prettier one further on, and ran after it, and so got deeper and deeper into the wood. Meanwhile, the wolf ran straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who is there?" "Little Red Cap," replied the wolf. "She is bringing cake and wine. Open the door." "Lift the latch," called out the grandmother. "I am too weak and cannot get up." The wolf lifted the latch. The door sprang open, and without saying a word he went straight to the grandmother's bed and devoured her. Then he put on her clothes, dressed himself in her cap, laid himself in bed, and drew the curtains. Little Redcap, however, had been running about picking flowers, and when she had gathered so many that she could carry no more, she remembered her grandmother and set out on the way to her. She was surprised to find the cottage door standing open, and when she went into the room she had such a strange feeling that she said to herself, "Oh dear, how uneasy I feel today, and at other times I like being with grandmother so much." She called out, "Good morning," but received no answer. So she went to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay her grandmother, with her cap pulled far over her face and looking very strange. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have!" "The better to eat you with, my child," was the reply. Sorry. I apologize. The better to... This is the problem with doing live streams of reading. If I was recording this, nobody would ever know that I'd made that mistake. Where was I? We'll start a little earlier. There lay her grandmother, with her cap pulled far over her face, and looking very strange. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have!" "The better to hear you with, my child," was the reply. "But, grandmother, what big eyes you have!" she said. "The better to see you with, my dear." "But, grandmother, what large hands you have! The better to hug you with." "Hi, Armin. How you doing?" "Oh, but grandmother, what a terrible big mouth you have! The better to eat you with." And scarcely had the wolf said this than with one bound he was out of bed and swallowed up Redcap. When the wolf had appeased his appetite, he lay down again in the bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loud. The huntsman was just passing the house and thought to himself, "How the old woman is snoring! I must just see if she wants anything." So he went into the room, and when he came to the bed, he saw that the wolf was lying in it. "Do I find you here, you old sinner?" said he. "I have long sought you." Then just as he was going to fire at him, it occurred to him that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother, and that she might still be saved. So he did not fire, but took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf. When he had made 2 snips, he saw the little Redcap shining, and then he made 2 snips more, and the little girl sprang out, crying, "Ah, how frightened I have been! How dark it was inside the wolf!" And after that the aged grandmother came out alive also, but scarcely able to breathe. Redcap, however, quickly fetched great stones with which they filled the wolf's belly, and when he awoke he wanted to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he collapsed at once and fell dead. I'm not doing too badly, apart from mangling one of the sentences in one of the absolute classic interactions in fairy tale history. Then all 3 were delighted. The huntsman drew off the wolf's skin and went home with it. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine which Redcap had brought, and revived. But Redcap thought to herself, "As long as I live, I will never by myself leave the path to run into the wood when my mother has forbidden me to do so." Now, I should add that that is normally, I think, the end of the story. Except, in Grimm's fairy tales, there is this extension. It is also related that once when Redcap was again taking cakes to the old grandmother, another wolf spoke to her and tried to entice her from the path. Redcap, however, was on her guard, and went straight forward on her way, and told her grandmother that she had met the wolf, and that he had said good morning to her, but with such a wicked look in his eyes, that if they had not been on the public road, she was certain he would have eaten her up. "Well," said the grandmother, "we will shut the door, that he may not come in." Soon afterwards the wolf knocked and cried, "Open the door, grandmother. I am Little Redcap, and am bringing you some cakes." But they did not speak or open the door, so the greybeard stole twice or thrice around the house, and at last jumped on the roof, intending to wait until Redcap went home in the evening, and then to steal after her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother saw what was in his thoughts. In front of the house was a great stone trough, so she said to the child, "Take the pail, Redcap. I made some sausages yesterday, so carry the water in which I boiled them to the trough." Redcap carried until the great trough was quite full. Then the smell of the sausages reached the wolf, and he sniffed and peeped down, and at last stretched out his neck so far that he could no longer keep his footing, and began to slip, and slipped down from the roof straight into the great trough, and was drowned. But Redcap went joyously home, and no one ever did anything to harm her again. So that is the complete story of Little Red Riding Hood, aka Little Redcap. As I said, that last section is not one I have myself even heard of before, because normally it ends with the first encounter of the wolf dies, end of story. But this second section is completely new to me. Now, I think there are various analyses of this, but the simple one, obviously, as a moral lesson, is keep to your path, don't stray from it, and don't talk to strangers. And this is then sort of reinforced with the second wolf, because that's of course what they do there. I am not particularly aware, unlike previously, of any sort of hidden meaning in here. There is a poem also called Little Redcap, which is inspired by this, which has been analysed, and obviously, as these things are, and has, I think, quite a different analysis. And I am looking at this and I'm trying to find in my mind whether there is anything in particular about it that stands out to me beyond a fairly straightforward moral of the story. There is a suggestion that the wolf brings a sexual predator type influence into the story. I'm less likely to go with that. Not that I'm an expert or anything, simply that you have to bear in mind that this story actually occurs in various forms all around the world. This particular one is based on a French version from 100 or so years earlier. That one actually ended, I think, with the wolf eating Little Redcap and her grandmother, and there is no happy ending. But if you are going to tell a story at the time, so the original would have been late 17th century France, if you had to pick a creature to sell a moral to, a wolf would make perfect sense. You don't necessarily have to have any other implications to it. So I'm inclined to go with the simpler analysis there, that the use of the wolf is simply because wolves in France in the 17th century were a very real threat. In fact, I think there are still wolves in France in some places. I don't know so much about Germany, to be honest, and given that this, I believe, is that this version is German in origin, it's entirely possible that everybody understood the danger a wolf would present, so it got kept in the story. This, of course, has been the subject of movies and animation. I'm not sure, did Disney ever do a version of this? I'm not myself certain that I've ever actually seen a version of Little Red Riding Hood. Maybe an animated one, but I mean, that would be so long ago I can't really remember it. It certainly doesn't seem like quite the thing Disney would find an easy task of dealing with. Having said that, do you know what? I think I did see a cartoon version, and the wolf actually... Oh no, I think that was a different story, because the wolf did have his stomach full of stones and then he fell down a well, and I think that's actually a different story, but I'm not positive. So anyway, that's the Grimm's fairy tale version of Little Red Cap. In comparison with others I have read, this one is positively benign. Although it does, of course, have some interesting parts to it. The idea that the huntsman is actually talking to the sleeping wolf. The wolf doesn't wake up, and then the wolf doesn't wake up when it has its stomach cut open and filled with stones, which sounds, yes, a little hard to believe, if you ask me. It is worth noting, by the way, that there was, and I think this was 17th century, a fairly famous instance of a man-eating wolf, and I'm actually going to take the opportunity to quickly look it up, because I'm wondering I think this is it. Okay. Oh no, this was a different one. All right. This is actually from this particular one is the Wolf of Gaisingi, and I apologize. It was a man-eating wolf which in 3 months killed and attacked many children in Gaisinga, near central Sweden in the early 1820s. That's kind of interesting because that predates this story, and it wasn't the one that I was thinking about. During a 3-month period between December 30th, 1820 and March 27th, 1821, the wolf attacked 31 people, which resulted in a total of 12 fatalities, most of whom were partially consumed by the wolf. With the exception of one 19-year-old woman, all victims of fatal attacks were children between the ages of 3.5 and 15. In addition, the 15 injured victims were mostly children except for one 18-year-old male. The wolf was killed on March 27, 1821. Historical accounts indicate that before becoming a man-eater, the wolf was captured as a pup in 1817 and kept in captivity for several years before escaping. In captivity, wolves tend to lose their natural shyness of humans and thus attack more frequently after escape from captivity. I'm not so sure about that, but that's actually not the man-eating wolf I'm thinking of. And let's see, I had not heard of that one. The one I'm thinking about, oh grief. There's another one, the Wolves of Ashta, a pack of 6 man-eating Indian wolves, which in the last quarter of 1985 to January 1986 killed 17 children in Asta, India. That, again, is not the... That's not the incident. Ah, here we go. This is the one I'm thinking about. This one was made... This one actually, I think, was also made into a movie. This is The Beast of Gévaudan. Now, this one actually, again, is too late to make it into the original story, but this was 1764, first attestation. And occurred between 1764 or 1767. I'm just trying to find a way of summarizing it. The description doesn't seem to be like that of a wolf. Descriptions of the period could identify the beast as a young lion, a striped hyena, a large wolf, a large dog, or a wolf dog, although it is not necessarily a wolf, apparently. But the point about this is, though, that man-eating wolves, while not necessarily as common as you might think, I don't know, how common do you think they are? They were known about. They were certainly an issue. People were aware of the dangers of wolves. So, incorporating one into a fairy tale certainly makes sense. This one is arguably one of the more famous instances. Don't get me talking about man-eating animals. I've got quite a chunk of knowledge rattling around in the back of my hood. Yes, Brotherhood of the Wolf was based on this. I can't remember what the French title was. It had Marc Descascos in it in 2001. I think I've seen it, but I don't really remember it. But that one's actually quite famous. I don't think they tell you how many people it ate. Anyway, so moving on to hopefully more interesting stories, or I don't know, less interesting stories. Anybody got any suggestions as about what I should read next? How long have I been doing this? Oh, 25 minutes. Okay. Loads of time. Let's go with one that is possibly not so well known. Who has heard the tale of Mother Holle? This one, I'm pretty certain, is not about to be made into a Disney movie. And I know I constantly keep coming back to jokes about Disney movies because, well, Disney has taken so many stories out of Grimm's fairy tales and made completely inaccurate cartoons about them. This is the tale of Mother Holle. And I'm pronouncing the E at the end because I'm pretty certain that's how it would be pronounced. Oh, excuse me a moment. There once was a widow who had 2 daughters, one of whom was pretty and industrious, whilst the other was ugly and idle. But she was much fonder of the ugly and idle one, because she was her own daughter, and the other, who was a stepdaughter, was obliged to do all the work and be the Cinderella of the house. Every day the poor girl had to sit by a well in the highway and spin until her fingers bled. I have read... yes. No, I can say I have read Rumpelstiltskin. No. Certainly, depending on how... If my voice hangs in there, I will do Rumpelstiltskin. Oh, my general practice, by the way, general practice is... later on this week, I will re-record Little Red Cap, and I will re-record this and then publish them as, I don't know, mini audio books, I suppose. Now it happened that one day the shuttle was marked with her blood, so she dipped it in the well to wash the mark off, but it dropped out of her hand and fell to the bottom. She began to weep and ran to her stepmother and told of the mishap. But she scolded her sharply and was so merciless as to say, "Since you have let the shuttle fall in, you must fetch it out again." So the girl went back to the well and did not know what to do, and in the sorrow of her heart she jumped into the well to get the shuttle. She lost her senses, and when she awoke and came to herself again, she was in a lovely meadow where the sun was shining and many thousands of flowers were growing. Across this meadow she went, and at last came to a baker's oven full of bread. And the bread cried out, "Oh, take me out, or I shall burn. I have been baked a long time." So she went up to it, and took out all the loaves, one after another, with the bread shovel. After that she went on till she came to a tree covered with apples, which called out to her, "Oh, shake me, we apples are all ripe." So she shook the tree till the apples fell like rain, and went on shaking till they were all down. And when she had gathered them into a heap, she went on her way. Well, I hope you're enjoying it. At last she came to a little house, out of which an old woman peeped. But she had such large teeth that the girl was frightened, and was about to run away. But the old woman called out to her, "What are you afraid of, dear child? Stay with me. If you will do all the work in the house properly, you shall be the better for it. Only you must take care to make my bed well, and to shake it thoroughly till the feathers fly, for then there is snow on the earth. I am Mother Holle." As the old woman spoke so kindly to her, the girl took courage and agreed to enter her service. She attended to everything to the satisfaction of her mistress, and always shook her bed so vigorously that the feathers flew about like snowflakes. So she had a pleasant life with her, never an angry word, and to eat she had boiled or roast meat every day. She stayed some time with Mother Holle before she became sad. At first she did not know what was the matter with her, but found at length that it was homesickness. Although she was many thousands better off here than at home, still she had a longing to be there. At last she said to the old woman, "I have a longing for home, and however well off I am down here, I cannot stay any longer. I must go up again to my own people." Mother Holle said, "I am pleased that you long for your home again, and as you have served me so truly, I myself will take you up again." Thereupon she took her by the hand and led her to a large door. The door was opened, and just as the maiden was standing beneath the doorway, a heavy shower of golden rain fell, and all the gold clung to her, so that she was completely covered over with it. "You shall have that because you have been so industrious," said Mother Holle, and at the same time she gave her back the shuttle which she had let fall into the well. Thereupon, the door closed, and the maiden found herself up above beyond... Thereupon the door closed, and the maiden found herself up above upon the earth, not far from her mother's house. And as she went into the yard, the cock was sitting on the well, and cried, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your golden girls come back to you." So she went in to her mother, and as she arrived thus covered with gold, she was well received, both by her and her sister. The girl told all that had happened to her, and as soon as the mother heard how she had come by so much wealth, she was very anxious to obtain the same good luck for the ugly and lazy daughter. She had to seat herself by the well and spin, and in order that her shuttle might be stained with blood, she stuck her hand into a thorn bush and pricked her finger. Then she threw her shuttle into the well and jumped in after it. She came, like the other, to the beautiful meadow, and walked along the very same path. When she got to the oven, the bread again cried, "Oh, take me out, or I shall burn. I have been baked a long time." But the lazy thing answered, "As if I had any wish to make myself dirty." And on she went. Soon she came to the apple tree, which cried, "Oh, shake me, we apples are all ripe." But she answered, "I like that. One of you might fall on my head." And so she went on. When she came to Mother Holle's house, she was not afraid, for she had already heard of her big teeth, and she hired herself to her immediately. The first day she forced herself to work diligently, and obeyed Mother Holle when she told her The first day she forced herself to work diligently, and obeyed Mother Holle when she told her to do anything, for she was thinking of all the gold that she would give her. But on the second day she began to be lazy, and on the third day still more so, and then she would not get up in the morning at all. Neither did she make Mother Holle's bed as she ought, and did not shake it, so as to make the feathers fly up. Mother Holle was soon tired of this, and gave her notice to leave. The lazy girl was willing enough to go, and thought that now the golden rain would come. Mother Holle led her also to the great door, but while she was standing beneath it, instead of the gold, a big kettleful of pitch was emptied over her. "That is the reward for your service," said Mother Holle, and shut the door. So the lazy girl went home, but she was quite covered with pitch, and the cock on the well, as soon as he saw her, cried out, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your dirty girls come back to you." But the pitch clung fast to her, and could not be got off as long as she lived. Charming. Again, on the face of it, simple moral to the story: work well, you get paid. Don't work well, you won't be paid. Now there is something about this that actually reminds me, and if I'm right, and I don't know if there's any connection, but there's this the idea of the bread in the oven for too long. There is a sort of similar story regarding Alfred the Great of England. There's a story that while he was hiding out from the Vikings, he was, oh grief, where was it? He was staying in marshland in, I think, the Cornwall, Dorset area, and the story goes that he took refuge in someone's hut, and they asked him to watch the cakes on the fire, which I think was basically bread, except that he was so wrapped up in his own thoughts that the cakes got burned. And the person the lady in question, I think, beat him with a broom. To me, there's a certain similarity, but maybe it's just the vague connection. Sometimes there are vague connections. Yes. Help others without expecting any to be aided in all ways. Yeah. It would have been interesting to know what would have happened if the lazy, ugly daughter had actually done her work well. Would she have been similarly rewarded, given that she went in with the specific intent of being rewarded, whereas the pretty and industrious daughter, of course, goes in there without expectation of reward. So there is that moral as well. Do good without expectation of reward, which... Where does that come from? Hang on. Where is that from? Yeah, that's right. It is... no. I thought that was actually in the Bible. Oh, yeah. Luke 6:35-36. But love your enemies, do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. But love your enemies, do good and lend, expecting your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. What? Oh, that is interesting. Is that it? Okay, now I've got to look up Luke 6:35-36. Because that is... Oh, okay, here's the full original quote. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you'll be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. That is a slightly... I can't remember how many times I've read this verse. I mean, not a huge number, but... It's just... this last part of verse 35 is kind of strange. Your reward will be great, and you'll be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. I suppose that is because he's kind to the ungrateful and wicked. How kind will he be to you? The interesting thing about this particular verse, love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Except then there's the do good to people. Do not expect anything in return. But then there is but you'll be rewarded in heaven. So, not exactly quite what it immediately says. Right. Sorry, this is actually kind of rougher on my voice than I expected. I don't honestly think I'm up to reading constantly for 2 hours fairy tales in this fashion. So what I'm going to do is I will actually take... I know, normally I take a break after an hour. So what I'm going to do this time is we will take a look at... One of the problems with reading these is in my brain I get these little tickles as if to say, this reminds you of something. And it does, but I can't remember what exactly. Oh, do you know what? I think that possibly this is Luke 6:35-6. Is it Luke 6:35-6? Now I'm going to have to go and remind myself, because otherwise I'm going to have somebody... Yes, Luke 6:35-6. I am starting to think that that Luke 6:35-36 might actually be the origin of it. So on the first part, except with its twist. So that first part is the do good without expectation of reward, And then the second part is this is what happens if you expect reward and don't do your job well enough. I'm wondering if that's actually where this originated. I would need to look up an analysis. Hang on a second. Okay, now I'm curious. Oh, grief! Apparently there was a movie. There was a feature film. Oh no, it's Mother Holly. Different. Is that the same? Right. Sorry. Now I've got to actually go back. I can't remember what I was looking for. Oh. Oh no. No. Looks like I'm wrong. Frau Holle, also known as Mother Hulda or Holda, is a figure rooted in Germanic and Scandinavian folklore, believed to be a pre-Christian deity associated with winter and the underworld, who was later collected by the brothers Grimm. The association with the underworld certainly makes sense. So I may be utterly wrong about the association with Christianity there. Yes. This is another one. Hang on a second. Hang on a moment. The story has its origins in German folklore and oral storytelling traditions. Mother Holle is believed to be based on an ancient Germanic goddess associated with the household, the hearth, and spinning, though her character has evolved over time. This particular background that I'm looking at actually makes no mention of the Bible at all. That's interesting. Moral lessons. There's, as usual, you can analyze these things to death. One day I'm going to have to do an analysis of, what was the poem? My son had to study it for English literature. I may do that at some point. Oh, okay. Mother Holle has been adapted in various forms over the years, including books, films, television shows, and theatre productions. I actually had no idea. Yeah, it's been made into movies and animated short films, but not apparently by Disney. Huh. That's kind of interesting. So my mental association with the Bible, utterly wrong. Oh well. Right. I am going to, like I say, take a quick break, and I am going to come back. Oh, you wanted me to read Rumpelstiltskin. All right. Rumpelstiltskin it is. And then that'll be the last one I do. 3 is about my limit. So give me a couple of minutes and I'll be right back. And I'm back. I hope the audio is okay. I've moved the mic so that it's not actually on camera. Right, where was I? The Tale of Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin was adapted by Disney, was it not? It was made into the... No, was it made into a movie? No, it wasn't. I'm wrong. Hang on, I have to check. I wasn't actually planning on doing... The stories I read tend to be, I pick one, and then the rest is up to whoever. Rumpelstiltskin. I know he appears in Shrek. Oh, he's in Once Upon a Time. Let's see. And I'm just having a look. I want to see whether it was actually made into media and popular culture. No. Disney does not appear to have had their hands on this, although it was a 24-minute... No, it's a Canadian movie. No, Disney has not had their hands on this one, but it is still a fairly well-known story. Let's see if the Grimm's fairy tale version matches up with your memory. So, this is the tale of Rumpelstiltskin. Once there was a miller who was poor, but who had a beautiful daughter. Now it happened that he had to go and speak to the king, and in order to make himself appear important, he said to him, "I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold." The king said to the miller, "That is an art which pleases me well. If your daughter is as clever as you say, bring her tomorrow to my palace, and I will put her to the test." And when the girl was brought to him, he took her into a room which was quite full of straw, gave her a spinning wheel and a reel, and said, "Now set to work, and if by tomorrow morning early you have not spun this straw into gold during the night, you must die." Thereupon he himself locked up the room and left her in it alone. So there sat the poor miller's daughter, and for the life of her could not tell what to do. She had no idea how straw could be spun into gold, and she grew more and more frightened, until at last she began to weep. But all at once the door opened, and in came a little man, and said, "Good evening, Mistress Miller. Why are you crying so?" "Alas," answered the girl, "I have to spin straw into gold, and I do not know how to do it." "What will you give me," said the mannikin, "if I do it for you?" "My necklace," said the girl. The little man took the necklace, seated himself in front of the wheel, and went whir, whir, whir 3 times, and the reel was full. And then he put another on, and whir, whir, whir 3 times round, and the second was full too. And so it went on until the morning, when all the straw was spun, and all the reels were full of gold. By daybreak the king was already there, and when he saw the gold he was astonished and delighted, but his heart became only more greedy. He had the miller's daughter taken into another room full of straw, which was much larger, and commanded her to spin that also in one night if she valued her life. The girl knew not how to help herself, and was crying, when the door opened again, and the little man appeared, and said, "What will you give me if I spin that straw into gold for you?" "The ring on my finger," answered the girl. The little man took the ring, began again to turn the wheel, and by morning had spun all the straw into glittering gold. The king rejoiced beyond measure at the sight, but still he had not enough gold, and he had the miller's daughter taken into a still larger room full of straw, and said, "You must spin this too in the course of this night, but if you succeed you shall be my wife." Even if she be a miller's daughter, thought he, I could not find a richer wife in the whole world. When the girl was alone, the mannikin came again for the third time, and said, "What will you give me if I spin the straw for you this time also?" "I have nothing left that I should give," answered the girl. "Then promise me, if you should become queen, to give me your first child." "Who knows whether that will ever happen?" thought the miller's daughter, and, not knowing how else to help herself in this strait, she promised the mannikin what he wanted, and for that he once more spun the straw into gold. And when the king came in the morning and found all as he had wished, he took her in marriage, and the pretty miller's daughter became a queen. A year after, she brought a beautiful child into the world, and she never gave a thought to the mannikin. But suddenly he came into her room and said, "Now give me what you promised." The queen was horror-struck, and offered the mannikin all the riches of the kingdom if he would leave her the child. But the mannikin said, "No, something alive is dearer to me than all the treasures in the world." Then the queen began to lament and cry, so that the mannikin pitied her. "I will give you 3 days' time," said he. "If by that time you find out my name, then you shall keep your child." Okay, I got that a bit wrong. "Then shall you keep your child." So the queen thought the whole night of all the names that she had ever heard, and she sent a messenger over the country to inquire far and wide for any other names that there might be. When the mannikin came the next day, she began with Caspar, Melchior, Balthazar, and said all the names she knew, one after another, but to every one the little man said, "That is not my name." On the second day she had inquiries made in the neighbourhood as to the names of the people there, and she repeated to the mannikin the most uncommon and curious. "Perhaps your name is Shortribs, or Sheepshanks, or Laceleg," but he always answered, "That is not my name." On the third day the messenger came back again and said, "I have not been able to find a single new name, but as I came to a high mountain at the end of the forest, where the fox and the hare bid each other good night, there I saw a little house, and before the house a fire was burning, and about the fire quite a ridiculous little man was jumping. He hopped upon one leg and shouted, 'Today I bake, tomorrow brew, the next I'll have the young queen's child. Ha! Glad I am that no one knew that Rumpelstiltskin I am styled.' You may imagine how glad the queen was when she heard the name. And when soon afterwards the little man came in and asked, 'Now, Mistress Queen, what is my name?' At first she said, 'Is your name Conrad?' 'No.' 'Is your name Harry?' 'No.' 'Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin?' 'The devil told you that! The devil has told you that!' cried the little man, and in his anger he plunged his right foot so deep into the earth that his whole leg went in, and then in rage he pulled at his left leg so hard with both hands that he tore himself in two. Now that's quite an abrupt ending to the story. The thing is, in a way, the good guy in all this was Rumpelstiltskin himself. Now granted, asking for the first child, not necessarily the nicest thing. We have absolutely no idea what he intended to do with the baby, if anything. But it all starts. The miller is a liar. The queen is greedy. The miller's daughter is arguably a victim. Well, no, she is a victim. Absolutely no doubt about that. And she was, in the end, put into a position where she really didn't have any choice but to make a promise that, granted, she didn't think she could keep. So if there is another person in this who is an innocent and a victim, it is, of course, the miller's daughter. Although, now that I think about it, there is a sort of parallel with the Frog Prince, because in that story, the king's daughter makes a promise to the frog that she doesn't think she'll need to keep. So there is that element to it. So it is a repeating thing. Except, of course, the moral of the Frog Prince was always keep your promises. So it is a somewhat odd little story. It's very difficult, I think, to find if there's supposed to be a moral to it. I am a little bit at a loss. Actually, this is interesting. The version here where he tears himself in two. That is the first time I actually heard this, and there is a quick overview of the story here, where Rumpelstiltskin at the end is enraged, stomps his foot, and disappears, which is a little different. Yeah, we don't. There is, and we are confirmed that we actually have no idea what his purpose was with the child. So it's completely open to interpretation. And then they add here, the story doesn't explicitly state why he wants the baby, leaving it open to interpretation and focusing on the power dynamics and consequences of the deal. Oh, that's an interesting one, saying, are Rapunzel and Rumpelstiltskin the same story? No, I don't think they are. In Rapunzel, oh grief, what was the name of the female, the antagonist in Rapunzel? Anyway, the father in the story had been stealing rampion from the enchantress's garden, and she to please his wife, who was pregnant, and let me see if I remember this correctly. I could look it up, actually. I've got it on here. And she wants the child, I think on her 12th birthday, locks her up in a tower. So it's quite a different story. It's not the same. The idea that Rumpelstiltskin and Rapunzel are the same story is not correct at all. And the outcome is quite different. And actually even more disturbing, because I talked about Rapunzel this morning, I think, didn't I, during the live stream? So I'm trying to see if there's anything else I can come up with. Yeah, German folklore. Apparently there are other variations in European folklore. Yeah, there's a apparently Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung and Bruno Bettelheim have interpreted the elements of the fairy tale's manifestation as universal fears and desires. Actually, that's an interesting possibility. I wonder if there's any study on the evolution of folk and fairy tales. That would be kind of interesting. Anyway, I am actually going to bring this to an end now because my voice is not really up for a fourth story. So, if anybody, I hope anybody watching enjoyed it. It had the benefit this time in that I did not have somebody appearing in Twitch chat to ask me if I was interested in their goods and services. Yes, I suppose there is that. Yes, that is a pretty good one. Be careful what you promise. Don't be greedy. Pride comes before a fall. Honesty is the best policy. Don't underestimate appearances. And don't promise to give your children away. Normally the moral is that yes, except of course the one person who came out of this quite fine, of course, was the king. I mean, the two most despicable people in the whole thing came out of this just fine. The miller, what was the reward for the miller? The miller gained importance. The queen gained gold. Sorry, not the queen. The king gained gold. So those two came out of this just fine. The one who suffers, of course, is the poor queen, who, of course, is the victim. I mean, yes, she comes out of it okay, thank goodness. What I find slightly odd is that she makes all this gold for the king. He marries her, and at no point does he ask her to spin more gold. I mean, that would be the logical thing to do, but apparently, no, he doesn't do that. So the consequences of the conspiracy, shall we say, with Rumpelstiltskin never get visited on anybody. Yeah, it is positively mild, except for the tore himself in two part. But I kind of feel sorry for Rumpelstiltskin a little bit. I mean, he did her a favor in return for very little. The first two times. I mean, if the miller was poor, that ring and that no, now there we go. To the girl, the necklace and the ring would probably have been of extreme importance, because that was possibly her only jewelry. Yeah, it was her only jewelry, and she herself was poor. So in other words, to save her life, she gave away what was most valuable to her, and there we go. There we go. On each of those three occasions, she gave away what was most important to her. First it was the necklace, then it was the ring, and then, yes, the child. So, which is an interesting little aspect to it. Right. Thanks for listening, Armin. I'll be back tomorrow, 0900 Greenwich Mean Time, most likely streaming The Long Dark. Although I do have something which I will certainly start streaming tomorrow, which I will briefly show you, which I got running today, and that is this. So this is what I will be... Sacrifices make progress. Sometimes. So tomorrow evening, we have this to look forward to. And I am really looking forward to this. The Sinking City starts tomorrow evening. So, anybody catches this, then that's what I'll be going to play tomorrow. And I am now actually going to take a quick have a look and see how much this is hitting my system. Answer. Actually, that's a surprising amount. So, Sinking City tomorrow, everybody. That should be fun. Been wanting to play that for some considerable time. Anyway,